All right, here we go. We're going to talk about something that might, when you first hear it, it might kind of make you defensive. It might put your wall up. You might be like, hey, Julie, I actually am going to turn off this episode because what are you talking about? It's not my fault. But hear me out. Stay with me. Why your back to back schedule might actually be your fault. I know when I say that you have all of the reasons, all valid, they're not even excuses, they're valid reasons. People are putting meetings on my calendar. I have this, I can't say no to that. All of those things completely valid. And also, when we have all of the reasons why things are outside of our control is when we start to really build up that resentment, that frustration. It's where that burnout comes when we don't feel like we have control. And so I say this in the most loving way to you of what is within your control and where might you have leaky boundaries, lack of boundaries, unsaid expectations, unclear expectations that is causing your calendar to look like that. And one of the reasons I was, when I was trying to think about what do I want to record for this episode, it's really coming from so many conversations that I have had with my coaching clients lately. And it's something that I've experienced. It's something that I know if you're somebody who works within an organization, if you're a leader, if you are a small business owner, your calendar can get crazy. And it's totally, the coach in me is like, it totally makes sense that you feel frustrated, that you feel burned out. And also, again, I'm here to challenge you to think about what is within I always talk to my clients like, what is within your circle of control? And again, I've had this has been a conversation since I started coaching, because especially if you're working in an organization where people are putting meetings on your calendars or you're being asked to go to all these, most of the people I talk to are like, I didn't have time to eat breakfast this morning because I hopped right on. Let me know if this is you. Like, I didn't have time to eat breakfast this morning because I had to catch up on quick things or get kids out the door, and then I had to hop right onto meetings. Didn't have time for lunch because I was back to back. Lucky if I could even run to the bathroom. In meetings until 5 o'clock. Then I've got dinner. If you have kids, it's like I got dinner and kid stuff. Or if you don't have children, it's just like dinner and maybe connecting with your like partner or friends. And then you open up your computer and you're back on your computer. If this sounds like you and you're nodding your head, yes, this is for you, right? And so I was just coaching multiple clients. There's one client in particular who I was just coaching through this, who was just feeling so burnt out. Because those of you who are listening, many of you listening to podcasts, listening to my podcast, you're already high achievers. You're already, you want to get better. You want to improve. You probably listen to this for leadership tips or for mindset tips. Like, you are in this space of wanting to do and to be the best that you can be. And so at work, you're saying yes and you're taking on all these things, and you are already doing so many things. And so you don't want to have to say no, or you feel like you can't say no. And so this client, she was just burning the candle at both ends, giving everything that she had to work. She has young kids, a young family, felt like she was trying to work before they woke up, spend a few minutes with them in meetings all day, and then she didn't have time to actually do the work. And so then she's trying to do some of it at night, staying up too late, doing it when they're going to bed, and is just feeling exhausted. Like, even just saying it, I can feel the exhaustion, and I'm sure you can feel it as well. And so there's multiple layers to this. Okay, so we're just going to tackle a few. There are multiple layers to this. And first of all, again, what we need to acknowledge is there's things within your circle of control and there are things outside of your circle of control. But oftentimes we think there's a lot more in the latter one that I just said, of like, there's a lot more outside of our control, when really, if we start to dig into it, there is more within our control than we realize. So the first thing that I want you to do is just take a deep breath and realize you are not alone. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you feel like, why don't I have it all figured out? Why can't I handle all of it when so-and-so can? Okay, so one of the things that I did with this client is I really just allowed her to air her frustration out first. Sometimes we're just like holding it in so much because we're trying to hold it in at work. We're trying to hold it in for our family, not explode. And so this was the space where I just let her air her frustration, her disappointment, her sadness, her anger, like getting it all out there. And then really talking about, one of the things that I really like to do is, when you're like, first you need to feel it before we try and move through it. You need to feel that frustration and like acknowledge. So like for me, I did a lot of acknowledging, right? So acknowledge for yourself, or I will acknowledge for you right now. It makes sense that you're feeling exhausted given the fact that you are in back-to-back meetings. It makes sense that you're feeling frustrated because you feel like you have no control of your calendar. You can't work out. You can't eat the way you want to. You don't have the time or the energy to hang out with friends, family, or just yourself, right? You need to acknowledge that those feelings are real and that they're there. And then the other thing that I really like to do is I like to then help you paint the picture, and I'll do this with my clients, paint the picture of what you want your ideal day to look like. Because now what we're trying to do is trying to move through that, what we call like very catabolic, kind of just this destructive energy where sitting in it for a little bit to feel it can be productive, but if we were to stay there, nothing's going to change. So then I want you to think about, what would my ideal day look like? Like if you had total control over your day, what would that look like? Because then it shifts your energy into more productive. So for this client, she was talking about what time she would wake up at, some things that she would do for herself in the morning, the time she would have with kids, the work hours that she would love to have, the schedule that she would love to have. Okay, so now we're in this energy of like, what could this possibility, what could that day look like? And then we start to get, and again, this is like multiple, we can't just do this in one snap of a finger because we have to have that awareness. We have to feel it. We have to know where we want to go. And then it's small little micro things that get you closer to that. Are we going to have that exact ideal schedule that we want? Well, the reality is if you don't have total control over your schedule, no. However, you probably can in your schedule take some pieces of that and get you closer. Maybe you can have some days that are in that ideal schedule and not every day. What we want is we want this to be the exception, that you're working nonstop or you have no control of it, rather than the rule of that being like what is happening every single day. And so the other thing I had her do then is we started talking about, what do you think that you need to address in order to get you closer to that ideal day? What do you need to address? And this can come up a slew of things. I will hear from this client, but from all the clients I've worked, a slew of things. Well, I need to address my my own stuff of trying to prove myself all the time, because a lot of the times with people I'm working with, and probably those of you who are listening, it's like me. I'm the one saying yes to everything. I'm the one not saying no. I feel guilty if I say no. So that usually comes up. It's like I need to address my stuff that's going on why I keep saying yes to everything. Oftentimes it's like there's some tough conversations I have to have. Like maybe it's a conversation with your manager or supervisor, with leaders that you work with, or with other people who you feel like are commandeering your schedule. Maybe you need to reset boundaries and expectations and let people know how you're feeling and what you're aiming to do, like coming with solutions. So maybe it's some tough conversations that you need to be having. It's learning to say no and stick to that no and sticking to the boundaries. If you're a leader, it's learning to delegate and sticking to that delegation, right? Because I've worked with leaders with big teams, small teams, with small business owners who just have like a few people, maybe they have an assistant or something like that. And it's learning to delegate those things and then sticking to it. And not having what I call like the leaky boundaries or no boundaries at all. Because a lot of the times when I'm coaching leaders and they're like, well, they ask me for help, or I just, it's easier for me to do it, or fill in the blank, right? So sometimes it's having it's like I said, it's having that level of awareness and figure out what's going on for you. It's having tough conversations. It's sharing your expectations, sharing your boundaries with people. It's sticking to those things, right? And it's removing the roadblocks and the obstacles that are getting in the way. Because really what we're trying to do is we're trying to change habits. This is a habit that you have created for yourself, where you are the yes man or the yes woman, right? Where you're just saying yes. People put meetings on your calendar and you just go. And we don't take the time to actually reset and go, do I need to be there? So the other thing that I often will have my clients do when they say that this is what they're, where they're getting burned out, is I'll have them do a calendar audit and really look at their week ahead and figure out what doesn't need to be there. Because let me tell you, I have yet to come across a client, either one-on-one or when I'm working with leaders or teams, that does not have some meetings on their calendar that don't need to be there. Either the meeting doesn't need to happen at all, or that particular leader does not need to be in that meeting. But Maybe they needed to be on the project check-in initially, and now it keeps getting added to your calendar. So you just keep going, right? But you don't actually know why you have to keep going. You just keep going and don't question it. Or maybe it's that there is a meeting that somebody else on your team could be taking over, but you've been taking it over. Or people who, you have work time blocked, and they keep booking meetings over it, and you just keep doing it. So we are teaching them that that's okay to do, right? So doing this calendar audit can really be helpful, and especially getting in the habit of it. I remember I had one client that I worked with a while back who really started to own this and get so excited. And I always say, it's not my job to tell you when you do that. Some people like to do it on the weekend to get ready for the week. Some people like to block Monday morning to do that, whatever works for you. But she started to get super excited and had fun doing this. She'd look at her week ahead and be like, how many meetings can I remove from my calendar or say no to? And the thing is the majority of the time, people aren't getting mad. We tell ourselves this story that it's going to look like we're, backing out of things, or that we don't want to do, or whatever it is. You tell yourself all these stories. The reality is, first of all, oftentimes if you bring it up to people and you're like, hey, what's the goal of this meeting? Why are we still meeting? They're like, I don't really know. That I've heard that so many times. Or if you're like, do I need to be in this meeting? They're like, no, not really. It can be a quick follow-up with you after, or hey, we'll just let you know when we need you, what weeks we need you in the meeting. So not only is it going to free up time for you, but it also gets other people to question. And this is a sign of leadership, of you asking the question and other people being like, yeah, I don't really know why we're still meeting. So it's a sign of leadership, and especially if you lead others, because you're setting the example too of why are we wasting time? I have yet to come across anybody in my entire life who is like, I just have so much time on my hands when it comes to work. I don't know what to do with myself, right? It's usually because we're in so many meetings. And so you're setting the example and giving people time back to actually do work that matters. And so doing that calendar audit, having a conversation again with maybe those that you work with to say, hey, this is how I've been feeling lately. And it doesn't have to be pointing fingers. It doesn't have to be you're doing this, you're the problem, I can't handle the work, because I hear that from people as well. What are they going to think if I say this? And so there's a lot of ways you can ease into that conversation. Tie it with a development conversation. If it's a time of year when you're looking at goals or your goals, or there's performance review, or especially with the leaders I work with, if their organization is sponsoring them to go through coaching, I say, hey, give them an update on what you're working on with coaching and share with them to the level that you feel comfortable, the goals we're working on. That's a great way to ease into it. So there's ways to ease into it, to say, hey, I've been feeling like I haven't had as much time to focus on our big priorities, our big initiatives, our big goals, whatever it might be. And so I'm putting some things into practice to help me to do that. And one of those things is being more mindful of my calendar. And then you can talk about, I've started to be getting, working really early, working at night, having a hard time, whatever your specific situation is. And you can talk through those things. And this is what I'm putting into practice. And I wanted to run it by you. I'm going to be done taking meetings at 5:00 unless there's certain exceptions, different things like that you can really talk about. And so again, what this does is it helps you to take ownership of this whole process. And it's not that all these things are being done to you, because you have more control. Okay, we can't control other people. We can't control all of that, but we can control how we show up, how we respond, and the boundaries that we set and stick to. And so when I say that in a loving way, and I would never flat out say that to a client, in this situation, because there's a lot of emotion with it, but I can say it here on the podcast to say, you feeling burnt out and exhausted might be your fault, not to point blame, but again, in this empowering way to be like, wow, I do have some more control over this than I thought. It might be saying no to things, shifting those priorities, having those conversations. We are taking back that circle of control. And those are little tiny micro moments that you can do. So if you have been feeling this way, along with many of the people that I've worked with, if you're feeling this way, try some of these things out. First, really assess for yourself, how am I contributing to this? And again, I want you to really think not in a guilt way, oh, it's my fault, but in an empowering way. What could I be doing differently to make a change to this? Why am I hesitant to say no, or things like that? Doing that calendar audit, having those tough conversations, being a leader and really figuring out where you have control over your calendar. Because again, this is for the betterment of the business, of the goals, of the organization, that you do this so that we're not wasting time in those meetings and that you're not getting burnt out, because eventually you're going to get to the place where you can't do it anymore. Okay, so I want you to sit with this and I want you to think about, if you've been feeling this way, what are 1 or 2 things that I shared that you can really take and start putting into practice for yourself now? And of course, if you're someone who needs support with that, reach out to me. Let's set up a conversation about how coaching really helps us. Because I will say, a lot of times leaders have been trying to do this on their own. Like, I've been trying to, but you either don't have the tools or an outside party to like talk to and like talk those emotions out and have someone trained to kind of point out like, ooh, this is what I'm hearing from you. This is what I'm seeing. This might be what's contributing to your struggle with this. And also to help support you in giving you ideas, having those tough conversations. I will say that's one of the things I do with my clients a lot, is having those, like, how do we have those conversations with people? How do I set the goals for that? What does that process look like? And having accountability to make sure you're actually sticking to it, because that's a really big difference too. Is it's easy for us to fall back into those habits, but if you're meeting with a coach every couple weeks and you're like, hey, here's what I did, this is the progress that I made, it helps you to keep that momentum until you look back months from then and you go, wow, I was able to take so much more control. I was able to gain hours back. So hopefully these tips are helpful for you and you realize that you have more control over it than you might have thought. And I want you to start to own your day and own your calendar more.